teachers here. Like, I always used to think my job was to teach my students to shoot lower scores. And that's somewhat true, but I think a better way of saying it might be your job is to teach your students how to practice and learn the skills that they need to shoot those lower scores. In other words, like what I say in a lesson isn't the secret sauce. That's not what's going to, change that player's skill set or change their swing. It's what they do with the information that you give them that is going to, be the thing that drives the change. So it's how can you as a coach help them be better practicers, help them learn faster, and do the things that they need to do to succeed. So it's maybe just semantics, but it's not just you telling them what to do. It's making sure that they know how to learn. So this is stolen straight from Trent Warner. Golf is poorly practiced. That's the most. Is that true, Trent? I think I saw you on TV say it's the worst practice sport in the world, right? Sorry, I know you're on mute. That's okay. But I've heard Trent say this, and I would agree. It's horribly practiced. It's because golf is different than other sports. It's most of the practice in golf is unsupervised. The player is on their own to work on things. It's not like when you were a kid playing youth sports. I think as a teacher, we gotta understand that human beings are going to human, and that's not necessarily a good thing. They're going to do human things when they go practice on their own. They want stuff to be easy. They want stuff to be relaxing. They want stuff to be, they want instant gratification. And they're probably going to lie to you all the time about their practice. And just, we do this too, right? We lie to people when we go to the dentist and they ask us how often we floss. We floss every day, for the last 3 days before this dentist appointment, or, I only have 2 or 3 drinks a week, doc. I don't know what you're talking about, what you're saying. We lie to make ourselves look better. Our students are going to lie to us, and it's not a condemnation on them. It's just the reality. They're going to say they're going to practice 5 hours in the next week. They're going to do everything you say, and they're probably not. Is that fair? Does anybody feel that your students lie to you about their practice habits and things like that? I think it's pretty common. So just know that that's happening. It's not, you can't take their word for it when they say they're gonna do this or they did do that. So got to understand human nature. So going back to other sports really fast, I think the biggest differences in golf are because of the unsupervised nature of practice. So I know that when I was a kid playing youth sports, I played a lot of basketball as a kid, and I would go to like basketball practice. Let's say a basketball practice was 2 hours long, and you might do something in practice. I remember practices might look something like this. You might do some stretching. You might do some footwork drills, some side to side. You might run back and forth. You might do some defensive drills and some passing drills and offensive drills. Do some team drills. You're doing all these different skill activities, right? And then if you're lucky, you might get to scrimmage for 10 or 15 minutes. And then the coach might make you run some wind sprints. And then you might finish it off with some free throws. That might be a coach run practice, right? Now, I remember as a kid, sometimes the coach couldn't make it to practice. Maybe the car broke down and he'd call in and say, hey, I need the team captain's going to run the practice. Okay. So, think about what that practice might look like, when the player on the team captain gets to run it. It's going to be something more like this. We're going to shoot around for a little bit and then we're going to play. All right. And they're going to do that because that is what is the most fun and enjoyable. That's the fun and enjoyable part of practice. You're not going to see the team decide they're going to do some wind sprints or things like that. And that's kind of how it is in golf, right? If the player's in charge of the practice, they're going to err on the side of, doing what they like to do and what's fun. So something that I like to think about when I'm talking about practicing with my players is, I'll use an example like this. You need to do the stuff that maybe you don't want to do if you want to get better, and that's not something that is in most people's nature. So I was thinking about doing like a video for this. I ended up not doing it, but I want you all to think about if you were to do this experiment, think about what the answers would look like. If you were, let's say, to go to your golf course, let's say in the afternoon, it's 3 o'clock, and there's some people on the range. They're not playing golf. They're just there to practice. And you were to go up and like do a little interview, you know, get your camera out and interview them, asking them some questions that you might first ask, you know, why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you hitting balls today? You know, what kinds of answers might you expect to hear? If you guys can, if you want to chime in, go ahead and unmute your microphone. But I think you'd hear answers like, yeah, you know, I'm playing golf this weekend and I'm just here practicing, you know, hitting balls. You might see some people that are like, well, I you know, I'm done with work and I don't have to pick up the kids for an hour. I just came out to hit a few balls and relax. You know, they're all there to practice, but you probably won't hear very specific things. If you ask, what are they working on? What kind of stuff might you hear? You might hear stuff like something that they saw on the Golf Channel, or something they saw on a broadcast, something they read in a magazine, something they saw on YouTube, maybe it's something that maybe they're taking lessons and it's something that their teacher said in the last lesson. And they're thinking about that while they hit. But ultimately, I think if you think about how most golfers practice, it boils down to this. They buy a bucket of balls. They think about X on the range, whatever X is. X could be thinking about some part of my swing or whatever latest tip I've got. And then they decide, is it good or bad? Am I hitting it better or not? That's pretty much practice, in my opinion. That's how our players think of practice. You guys kind of feel that's the case? If you were to just pick a random group of golfers, that's kind of how their brain works. Or do you think they have more to it than that?
I think you're right, Dan. I think the majority of people do that. I hear a lot like, I'm just going out to see how I'm hitting it today.
Going out to see how I'm hitting it, right? No real plan, no real specifics, no video, no training aids out. You don't see a whole lot of rehearsal swings or slow motion swings, or you just don't see that kind of stuff. I think if you just kind of watch practicers in general. So not saying you can't get better at golf doing this, but it's probably not the most efficient way to get better at golf. So that's what we're going to get into here in a second. Let's go on the flip side. Let's look inward for this. So think about how most lessons end up. And I'm not saying this is how we all do it. I don't exactly know how everybody teaches lessons, but I'm guilty of a lot of these things. But a lot of lessons boil down to one of these two. Did I get a better looking swing on video today? Or did I get some TrackMan numbers that are better? Or did the ball flight change? If I did, yay, it was a good lesson. And if I didn't, B, it was a bad lesson. And I don't know if you guys, as you're teaching lessons, if you find sometimes that, you know, that's kind of the extent of the lesson. Well, you were taking it inside and now you're taking it back straight. And I got a before and after picture and you're better at golf, right? I think that's probably not a great way to think about lessons either. A lot of times I'll sit there as I'm driving home or laying in bed at night, and I'm thinking about my lessons, you know, which ones went well and which ones went poorly. And, you know, I know some of us as teachers will have days where it seems like every lesson's a hit, and some days where it seems like nothing really works. You get a person in front of you and you know, you decide you're going to make a little change to their takeaway, and all of a sudden they start shanking it, and you spend the next 45 minutes fixing the shank that you caused. Like, you know, that happens, right? And then when you have a good day, it's like, you know, they were slicing and now they're hitting bomb draws, and you think you're a rock star. But I've been thinking about it a little bit different lately, especially after kind of getting this assignment to talk about practice. I think in reality, you should think about your lesson quality kind of like this. Did the things that you worked on in the last lesson transfer to the next lesson. I think most of us probably work with students regularly. I don't know, there are a lot of teachers that teach one-offs, but like if, for example, if I had a lesson with a person, we worked on like mid-range wedges, you know, we worked on 60 and 70-yard wedges, and they show up 3 weeks later, and I say, okay, hit me a 60-yarder, and they chunk the snot out of it, and then I have them hit another one, and it goes 90 yards. You know, the lesson might have been felt like that was a good lesson, but they're coming back and they're not any better, right? I think that's a good way to look at your own, you know, as you review your own teaching quality and how you're doing. Is are you getting results from what you worked on? I think a great measure is, you know, at the beginning of the next one, and instead of trying to create, this is a kind of a big one. I was thinking about this a lot. Instead of trying to create like a great before after, like, you know, we all probably do this, right? Like you got your video of swing, you got swing 1, you go through the lesson, you got swing 2, it's better, you know, side by side them. You know, I probably do this almost every lesson. But instead, you might want to try thinking about going for a great after before. And what I mean by that is, think about the after swing or the after TrackMan numbers or the after, you know, video from the previous lesson, and compare that with the first swing of the next lesson. And that is a really, in my opinion, that's probably a better measure of whether or not you did good in the lesson. If you have a player that was way inside in their takeaway, and you wanted, and that was the theme of the lesson, getting the takeaway a little more on point, and they come back for the next lesson and it's exactly the same as it used to be, inside and terrible, then was it a good lesson? Probably not. Probably not. I think that's something I'm going to look at a lot more. I'm going to make it a point for me, at least, to pull up the last swing of the last lesson and the first swing of the next one, and I think that's going to be a better measurement of how you're doing as a coach. Personally, does anybody have any thoughts on that different way of thinking about it? Does anybody do that already, or, you know, do you kind of just start off every lesson with, here's where we're at and here's what we're trying to get in this hour, but then the next lesson they come back and is there always a review and a comparison with last time, or not?
Hey, Dan, I know you're familiar with the golf tech system, and obviously before and afters are a big part of every lesson content.
Totally.
But one of my favorite things to do is to take their first swing, their evaluation swing, and go, here's where you were. You know, you are definitely better. You may not think you're better because it's almost like labor pains. They forget how painful it was, and they just think, I'm not getting that much better. I'm like, look at how much better you are. Look at how you're striking it. Yes, compared to launch monitor data. And they don't practice that much in between. So I think using the time history that we have, fortunate to go back, pull up your first lesson and show some of the progress they've made, is just, it's powerful.
I agree. I think it's something I for those of you that don't know, I worked at Golf Tech for a long time, and I still do a lot of the same things, before, afters, in lessons and things like that. And I think it's great to go back and see where they were and see where they are. And that type of before after is I think a little bit a better measure of how you're doing as a coach. I think any of us here can make somebody's swing look different in 1 hour, or make somebody's numbers change on TrackMan in an hour. But it's more a measure of, can you do it over what's happening over 2 months, over 3 months, and that's gonna be the bar that you get measured by, as far as your players getting better. So, and going back to the theme of this presentation is like how you talk about practice is going to be a big part of how much they change or improve. So I think that's a big one.
Hey, Dan, I love what you said about just, being kind of judged on the longevity of it all. And I think what I judge a lot with students is if in the previous lesson they're doing some exaggerated practice swings or drills or whatever, and then they show up to the next one and they're just hitting ball after ball after ball, then I didn't do my job. I didn't get the point across, because that's not going to stick. just going to revert. So I try and make sure that they're doing those things that you asked. Like I'm sneaking a peek right away. The first time you show up and hit a ball, man, I'm judging.
Totally. And that's, I mean, I think as teachers, you know, I said earlier, humans are going to human, like teachers and myself included. I mean, I don't want to take the blame for it. If somebody shows up and their swing looks the exact same as it did, you know, a month ago, and, you know, human nature, my human nature is I want to blame the student, right? They didn't do what I said. They didn't listen to me. They're not practicing. But I think you're better off, maybe, you know, I think as teachers, we're better off looking within and saying, okay, maybe I'm not, it's not that I'm not telling them what to do, but maybe I'm not telling them how to practice to do it. You know what I mean? They're hearing me, but they're not getting it. And that's sometimes more on the teacher than it is on the student, as much as, you know, I want to blame the student, you know, just for my own ego. But sometimes it's better to look within, right? Control what you can control, which is yourself. So I try to make this, like, I was thinking about this, you know, I've read a million different books and listened to a bunch of different presenters talk about different methods and styles of practice. And I tried to kind of create a little bit of an exhaustive list. I'm not going to get into detail about all of them, but as a teacher, I think these are all like tools that you should be considering when you're, you know, trying to help your students solve a problem, whether it's a contact problem, motion problem, new swing, new contact, whatever it is. There's a lot of tools at our disposal. And I think as teachers, how we use these tools is what's going to create the most efficient practice. So you'll kind of get the idea as I go along here. So when you think about different methods, how these players should practice, there's a bunch of different styles. We'll start with the big ones. So like block practice, right? We all know what block practice is, over and over repetition. There's random practice, variable practice. And if anybody has any questions about what any of these are, let me know. Differential practice, you know, practicing hitting the toe and then hitting the heel on purpose and then hitting the sweet spot, potentially, like practicing, exploring the scale, so to speak. Differential, there's mental practice, mental reps. There's transfer training is a form of practice. There's general practice. And when I say general, I mean somebody goes to the golf course and they're going to have a 2-hour practice session. They're going to work on their irons, wedges, driver, putting, chipping, bunkers. They're going to do a little bit of everything in that 2 hours, or, you know, should they get real specific and just work on, you know, one key area? But as far as different types, there's a lot of different types. Now I highlighted in yellow the ones that I think golfers tend to do on their own. You see mostly block practice. In other words, you know, 8-iron, 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 switch, 6-iron, 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 switch. You see a lot of that, and I think you see a lot of general practice. Somebody goes to the course, they hit some wedges, hit some irons, hit some drivers, go roll a few on the putting green, they go chip a few around the short game area, and they call it good. I think those are the most common. I'm not highlighting them because they're good or bad, just I think those are the ones people gravitate towards. The next thing is a teacher to consider, I think, is the feedback tool. Okay, the golf ball being 1A. You know, when you're teaching a lesson or hitting a golf shot, a lot of times, if the golf ball is struck well and goes straight, it was good, right? And if it wasn't, it was bad. This is how people think. But as teachers, we understand that, like, let's say you're trying to change somebody's, let's just say their takeaway. I'm going to use takeaway a lot, but it could be anything. Let's say you're trying to change somebody's takeaway and they're way inside and you want them to be here, however you want to describe it or do it. And then they decide they're going to use the golf ball as their feedback mechanism. They're going to go to the range and hit some balls. Yeah. And think about the takeaway. Is the golf ball going to tell them if they did it right? If they did it the new way? Yes or no? Is the golf ball going to tell them if they took it away inside or if they took it away the way you want it? I would say probably not, right? The golf ball, in fact, I would probably say that if they do it the old way, the way they're comfortable with, they'll probably hit more good shots than doing it the new and improved, uncomfortable way. So, you know, giving somebody something to work on where the golf ball does not provide feedback is I think something to really be careful with. Other kinds of feedback I find, I mean, you can use any or all of these. I find visual feedback to be pretty helpful, and that can be real time with like mirrors or reflections. You can use video. I mean, like I said, working at Golf Tech, we had video of every swing. Practice there is great for the video feedback. You can introduce constraints like, like an alignment rod for shallowing the club out, or a towel behind the ball to work on attack angle or something. Constraints can be a feedback tool. You can use training aids, simple ones that you can make out of tees and alignment rods, or ones that you can buy. You can use launch monitors for feedback. Some students now, I don't know about you guys, but I find more and more of my students have launch monitors. Maybe it's just a little personal one, a little $500 one, but I've got students now that have, Bushnells and TrackMans at their house, more and more common. And some of us even use, I forgot, I was going to say impact spray. The Dr. Scholl's is a great feedback tool for contact. And some of us now are getting into more 3D devices in lessons. You might use K-Vest or Hack Motion, and some of these students might even have some of that. So when it comes to learning and getting better at stuff, I think it's important for us as a teacher to make sure that you're making sure that your student has the right feedback for the thing that you want to work on. And the golf ball is great for some things. Like if I have a student with the face that's wide open and I want to get it closed, the golf ball will tell the player if they're doing that. But, it certainly won't tell the player if they're shortening their backswing, or, getting less laid off or more across the line, or all that kind of stuff. So when you're kind of finalizing your, wrapping up your lesson, you got to make sure that your student knows what they need to work on and has the right feedback, or else they're going to be struggling. And we see this. I mean, going back to takeaway stuff, right? Like, let's say the player doesn't have good feedback. They're using just the golf ball, and you want the takeaway. They're inside and open, and you want it more neutral. I'd say you're going to, if they don't have the right feedback at the next lesson, they're either going to be the exact same as they were. They're going to be way overdone, especially like your high school kids that practice 100 hours a day. They're going to overdo it. And the ones that are going to be successful are the ones that maybe actually stood and did it in front of a mirror, or videoed their swing a few times while they were practicing. But if you don't guide them in the practice and they're just relying on the golf ball, then you're probably not going to get the results you want. Make sense? Lastly, as far as like, think of all these little methods here. I want you to think of these as like tools that you can pick and choose when you're prescribing practice. The last one is to be like movement style, right? We're trying to learn something new, trying to change a motion. We can do it at full speed, right? We can do it in, my camera's right behind my thing. We can do it in slow motion. We can do it in small swings or short versions. On that topic, do anybody have this problem? Do your students know how to do slow motion? Do you ever think about that? Can your students do a slow motion swing? I mean, I don't know how many lessons I've done where I'm like, I'll demonstrate something. It's like, okay, we're going to hit a little slow motion swing, and I want you to focus on arching in the finish, right? And you're demonstrating, you're hitting these little wedges that go 20 yards, and they're watching you, and you're like, just a little slow motion one. I just want you to finish like this instead of like that. And then, okay, now it's their turn. You get the video camera out, and it's full rip, 120 yards, almost full speed, and you're like, okay, hang on. If you can't do slow motion, what are the odds are you're gonna be able to change any of this other stuff? You guys find that to be the case? Players are horrible at slow motion. Other things you can do movement wise, you can do exaggerated stuff like Trent was talking about. Want that takeaway, for example, you want it more, they're inside, you want it here, you exaggerate outside. That would be a thing you could prescribe. You might prescribe motions with a ball, and you might prescribe motions without a ball. Ball changes everything, as everybody knows here. I can't think how many times I've got, working on a motion or a new motion with the player, and we're on video and we're rehearsing it, and we're making some air swings, and oh my gosh, we're looking at it face on, and look at all this shaft lean at impact. Doesn't this look amazing? And then you put the ball down there, and train wreck goes back to normal. So as a coach, I think thinking about all of these different pieces in how you prescribe practice can really change the way they do it. I don't know. Is there anything I'm missing here, guys? I mean, I was trying to think in broad terms. I mean, from types of practice to feedback, methods of feedback to different ways of changing motions and motor patterns. Is there some other ones that I didn't include, or that maybe you had questions about?
Maybe one, I don't know if you'd throw this in movement, I guess, just having them hit a particular type of shot to make the mechanics better.
Yep, like let's say their attack angle sucks and they flip it up, maybe just having them hit like small little low ones, or try to hit draws instead of slices or things like that. Okay, good. Yeah, I agree for sure.
Dan?
Yeah.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
I first of all want to thank you for putting this on, but I wanted to know yourself, and maybe anyone on the call, there's a lot of experience on here, creative ways that you've been able to make practice fun. Personally, I've had some really good success with, we've all had students that, they take a bucket of 500 balls, they hit 495 drivers, and then they hit, 5 putts and try to call it a day. Things like the up and down game, possibly even using some creative, junior type of approaches to make, some games out of practice has worked well with adults. I'd love to hear your thoughts on creative ways that you've been able to make, the practice fun for individuals so that they really do want to put the time in, or actually put the effort in, in areas that they don't normally take time to practice. And like I said, I'd love anybody else to chime in as well.
All right, that's a great question. I've got some thoughts coming up on that. I can get into it now. I think it's probably in the next little bit. I'm definitely going to talk a little bit about that. But I will say my first thing that I'll like, my pet peeve is I try not to use the word drill ever in my teaching. I hate drills. Drills sound terrible. Let's do the ladder drill. Isn't this so? And it's just it sounds like work. I way prefer the term task or challenge or game. I just try to take that. I try to take that drill word out of my vocabulary, because I can't think of any time doing a drill is fun. And I was doing a presentation about something else, I remember, and I was like, the only thing I hate worse than drills is talking about drills. I think not that they're not good. It's just like it's not for me. It's not a fun way to approach practice. And I'm gonna get into a little bit more a little later on here with how to make it more fun and engaging and stuff like that. But I think that's a great question. Anybody else have anything to say on that at the moment?
Dan, I actually have a quick question. And I'm putting my instructor hat back on. I had to dust it off a little bit, but I think what you talked about with feedback is really powerful. I was a person who would block practice every day that I could.
Yeah.
And what you talk about feedback and the golf ball not being the best item to show feedback, I think that kind of broke my brain a little bit. How do you coach someone who would be a habitual block practicer that only focuses on the golf ball to look at a different piece of feedback in order to get more out of practice?
So great question. And I think it's pretty common. So in general, I think a lot of golfers are not very excited about like setting up. Let's say you're working on something that would be very good with video. We're working on takeaway or backswing or whatever, and it'd be great with video, and the ball doesn't tell you a very good story of that. But you have a player in front of you that's kind of maybe averse to that idea. They don't want to be the person on the range with the video camera out. They might feel self-conscious about it, or maybe it's just too much work. They don't really know what they're looking for. They don't see the value in it, or things like that. So what I try to do with that player is I want to kind of soft introduce them to like videoing themselves. Not in an analytical way at first, but I might say something in a lesson early on where I'm like, next time you go practice, I want you to set up the camera down the line. I just want you to shoot one video and just send it to me, and that's it. And just that's your homework. Okay, that's your task. But when you come back in for the next lesson, we'll have a look at it. And so, their job isn't to sit there and analyze their swing. Their job is just learn how to get their iPhone set up, record a video, and send it to me. And that can be like a baby step in them saying, okay, that wasn't that hard to set up. That wasn't that weird to do. Maybe in the next lesson, it might be okay. I want you to do X drill. I wouldn't use drill. I want you to do this challenge and hit 5 shots and send that to me. And you just get them. You get them like used to setting it up a little bit at a time, and as they send you videos, you might not even have to comment on them. You just want them to prove that they're doing it right. And then once they are doing it and they have no problem putting a camera down, then you can start to say, okay, now I'm gonna have you watch your own swing a little bit, and we're just looking at this one part. You don't have to look at the whole thing, and you're gonna see if you can do this like we were talking about in the lesson. But you can kind of build on it slowly. A lot of times it's like a sneaky trick. If I give somebody like a homework assignment, let's say I give somebody the homework assignment of sending me a video, and they don't send it in the next lesson, I'll probably be like, I'll ask them in the lesson. So how did practice go? And did you video your swing? Oh yeah, I videoed my swing. Okay, let's see it. Show it to me. It's on my tab. I was using my tab. I don't, and you'll get the excuse, but now they know that they're on notice. They're going to be a little bit more accountable. So the next time you ask them, they will probably do it because they know that they're going to be asked to show their work. So those kind of little things can really get people kind of going on that kind of stuff. Make it a one swing video or a one shot thing, and then build on it from there. In my experience. There are questions or comments. So if I'm going to get into the fun of it in a little bit here still, or that's going to be a topic. But yeah, I think when I'm trying to help players, I'm trying to decide what do I want to have. What am I looking to improve? Is it a skill? Is it a movement? And what type of practice? What type of feedback? What type of slow motion, exaggeration, short swings, what kind of things are going to help that player the most? And then, like I said, I might have them take a quick video of them doing practice so I can see how they're doing. A couple other things to consider. Just in general, when you're deciding what to work on and what to have your student practice, just some things I like to ask myself is, can I make this thing less disruptive? The one scare a lot of people have about taking lessons in general is, is this going to screw me up, and for how long, right? A lot of times when you're making a change in the swing, for example, you have to consider like the matchups and the unintended consequences of it. If you have a over-the-top slicer person and they're outside in and faces wide open, and you give them a lesson where you're shallowing them out, you got the stick down, you're showing them how to do it, and you're getting the club path straightened out, and instead of being outside in 10, now they are zeroed out. Is that a good lesson? Is that good enough for one session? It's just one thing. You you've got a guy path left, open face, and you just got him path 0. Are we good? Is he going to go out and play good golf, or she? Anybody have a thought on that? I'm going to tell you, I don't think so. I think they're going to go out and hack, if that's the only part of the lesson, because there's going to be there's unintended consequences of that. If you didn't tell them anything about getting the face closed, for example, you just made them worse. If you didn't probably help with their attack angle probably went to hell. They probably learned just how to shank it. There's a lot of things that could have gone wrong with that path lesson. So those are things that as a teacher, you got to make sure you're planning not only what you want the main theme of the lesson to be, but like what else might they need to be able to do to make this correction actually be functional and not disruptive. Going back to Holly's question a second ago, got to be careful not to prescribe practice that you just know this player is not going to do. If you've got a 70-year-old guy that barely knows how to use his phone and can't hardly see it, that might not be the guy that you want to get him set up on the video and the lines and all that stuff. He might not be able to handle that, and so you can't. If you can ask yourself, is this player even going to do this? And you don't see it happening, my recommendation would go a different direction with that lesson. If they're not going to do it the way that you want, then work on something else. Work on it in a different way. Some players just they're not wired to do the things that I might do, or that Ty might do, or that Trent might do, or that Alicia might do. They might not have that in them. So sometimes you can't know that right off the bat, but I mean, I've got one of my players. I see him all the time for a lesson. He's a horrible addicted gambler, and there's a money game at Omni every single day. And it's like he shows up to practice, and 4 minutes later he's out playing the money game, right? He'll come in after the third hole, get his lesson, and right back to the 7th hole. And it's like, this guy's not going to spend an hour and a half grinding on the range when the money game's going on. So I can't give him I can't give him those types of things. I have to teach him a different way, because he's just not going to do it. Doesn't have it in him. Anybody ever see that? I mean, I know, different folks on this call we all have different types of students, but I mean, just be careful try not to give somebody something you just know that they're not going to do. If you have a really self-conscious person that's scared to even step foot on the driving range, you probably don't want them putting a bunch of training aids out looking like Tin Cup. They're just not going to be comfortable doing that, and they're not going to do it. So find a better way, find a different way. You can always help somebody. It doesn't have to be. There's lots of ways to help people. I was listening to the talk radio the other day, and Joel Klatt was on. He's a analyst guy, football guy. And he was talking about football coaching, and he said this thing, and he's like the players on the football field will only do things that the coach allows. So I was thinking of how that could relate to golf. So let's say you have a lesson with somebody, and we're in the lesson. They show up 9 o'clock in the morning, and how's it going? We had just dropped the kids off at school. Let's do this. Their first thing, they pull out a 5-iron and start full swinging. Right, full swing 5-irons, no warm up, no practice swings, no nothing. Is that good? Does anybody think that's good? Full rip 5-irons right out the gate. I mean, I know that there's a famous quote, I can't remember who it is, that says just hit the 2-iron, and if you can do that, you'll be fine. But that's probably not the best practice. But if you allow that behavior in a lesson, they're going to assume that that's okay to do. If you say something like, I'm going to video you, I want you to do this exaggerated rehearsal, and then we're going to hit a shot, and we're going to do this 10 times. I'm going to get some videos. And they do the exaggerated rehearsal, and then they hit the shot, and you're messing with your video, and then the next ball's in the air, and then the next ball's in the air, and the next ball's in the air. And they're not doing it. They're not doing the exaggerated rehearsal in the lesson. What are the odds they're going to do it in practice, right? So if you allow something to happen in a lesson, hitting balls too fast, skipping their practice swings, skipping their rehearsal, their slow motion isn't slow motion. You're inherently allowing that in practice. So just keep your eyes out for stuff that they're doing in the lesson that you know is, not going to help them when they're on their own. Because when they're on their own, they're not going to be better. They're going to be worse when you're not there. Does anybody see any of that stuff in their lessons where, we're going to rehearse and they do it the first time and that's the end of it? Happens all the time. Oops, I'm gonna drop my club here. This doesn't have a lot to do with like practice, but just in general in teaching, we're trying to find the right mix of. I usually try to find a good blend of like a motion change and skill development that are correlated. So like, I don't know if anybody. I would assume most of you guys do this. Let's say you have a person that's hitting the ball too high, angle of attack is terrible, and they're chunking it and topping it and stuff like that. So you might have a lesson where you're working on a motion change. Maybe it's a motion of getting forward or a late, changing the timing of the release that's going to correlate with the skill that they're trying to develop. And then the skill practice might be like what Trent was saying earlier, hitting it low. But we want to try to match up the motion change and the skill that you're trying to improve. All right, going back to the fun part, how to motivate. So I talked about this a little bit. I think one way to do it is ask for proof of practice. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but if one of your assignments was you want them to use video, ask them to show you the video, send you the video, make them a little bit accountable. Use challenges instead of drills. Like I would suggest, let's say somebody's struggling with short putts and you want them to do the northeast, west, south drill, put 4 balls around the hole at 4 feet or whatever the distance you want is. So if I tell them I want them to do the drill, put 4 balls down, go till you make all 4 in a row, they're going to nod their head and say, yeah, I'll do it. But they're not going to do it, probably. They will do it if you give them a challenge and say it's like this. I don't think that you can do this. I don't think you can send me a video where you make 4 in a row from 4 feet. And I want you to prove me wrong. It's the same exact thing. It's the same exact drill. It's the same exact everything. But the way that you say it will probably motivate a lot of your players a lot differently, right? If somebody told me that they don't think I can do this drill, making 4 stinking 4-footers in a row, all right, I'm going to show this person. I'm going to do it, right? And it's going to force me to practice. It's probably not going to happen on the first try. It's going to take 100 tries, 100 takes. But they'll actually do it if you frame it as a challenge, as opposed to do this drill and then tell me how it went. Does that kind of make sense from an accountability standpoint? Just different ways of motivating humans, right? Can you make something more fun? Can you make it a task, a challenge? You make them accountable. As far as the fun factor goes, there's not a lot in this particular piece about fun, but I would use the word like satisfying is a word that I like to use maybe in place of fun. So for me, if I go to the range, and I've had some serious problems with my golf game in the past, like some really problematic things, and in particular, it was for me, it was the driver. I could not keep it in play for like 4 or 5 years or 6 years, and so I made a task or a game of seeing if I could hit 14 tee shots in practice without losing a ball outside of a 65-yard window. And doing that in practice, number one, it really changed my game. I've fixed that problem, thank God. But it also gave me like a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment when I did it. So instead of just going to the range and hitting drivers and seeing how it went, my goal was to do 14 out of 14 in the fairway or in this findable zone, and I wouldn't leave until I did that. And I wouldn't say it was fun, to your point earlier, but it gave me a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction, and then going from there, confidence that I might actually be able to do this in a tournament someday in my life, instead of losing a dozen balls around. So when it comes to like motivating people, I think giving things in terms of tasks, challenges, things that they can check off a list and feel good about, is fun in and of itself, and it's also very rewarding. And it's better than just say do X for this many times or for an hour or something like that. So I find that that's a real motivating thing. If you can give somebody a task or a challenge that's challenging enough that it's going to be tough for them, but it's doable, that's a great way to motivate golfers. So as you're watching, if you want to motivate your student, think about what they need to work on, devise a task or a challenge in your head, and make that the practice goal for the next 2 or 3 weeks. I want you to do this until you can nail this challenge. And I think you'll see a lot more motivation in that regard versus do X drill X number of times. That makes sense? That helpful at all?
Yeah.
I also like to, on the topic of fun, I mean, practice shouldn't always be, I would love it to be fun all the time. But in my experience, it's not. It doesn't necessarily have to be fun. I think the question, if you have somebody that's complaining about, or you can tell they're not having fun practicing, like, start talking to them about this. Like, is it fun to go out and shoot a career round? Yeah, it's like the most, it's awesome. It's a great feeling. Or win a tournament, or beat your buddies out of $20 or whatever. That's fun. Just like winning a basketball game is fun. But some of the stuff you have to do that isn't always fun. Making a million 3-foot putts is not that fun for anybody. But that's how you win tournaments, right? So sometimes you can kind of frame it like it's not always going to be fun. If it's fun, it's probably not hard enough or challenging enough. If it's always fun, like I was talking about, I try to learn guitar. That's like what I try to learn, right? And it's fun to play for sure, but like learning something new is not fun. It's hard. It sucks. I make mistakes all the time. It's I sit there, I get the video camera. I've cussed into my phone more times making mistakes on my guitar, pissed off that I blew it again. It's not always fun, but it's fun when you get it right. So that's something that's if they think it's always going to be fun, that's probably a conversation you got to have. I was going to go through some examples just really quick, like going just what style of practice might be best. I'm not going to go super in depth, but like, let's say you've got a player that's a horrible lag putter. You watch their putting stroke, and it's okay, it's fine. It's maybe not PGA Tour stroke, but it's certainly reasonable. And we go back to our practice styles. Horrible lag putter. What style of practice might be best for them, or what type of practice? Is block practice good for them? Standing there at 50 feet and hitting 50-footer after 50-footer after 50-footer, is that good? Probably not. Is the golf ball going to provide good feedback for them? Lag putting? Yeah, for sure. Should they practice lag putting at full speed or slow motion if there's no problem with their mechanics? Probably full speed, right? Yeah, they can't practice hitting a 50-footer in slow motion probably. But go back to this little chart here. If you were going to take a screenshot of anything in this video, it might be these methods to consider if you were going to take a picture on your phone or snap a screenshot. But when you're looking at your student and you're trying to figure out what you're going to work on and how to work on it, go back to that and decide, what type is best, what feedback should they use, and how should they, what kind of movement should they be using to get what you're trying to say. Horrible lag putter. What about if you've got the driving range club champion, this person's standing in front of you, they're a stripe show on the range, and then they go out and just shoot 87, right? They lose 7 balls and they're awful. But you know, you're watching them on the range. Their numbers are great. They're striping it. You know, what kind of practice do they need? Going back to the screen here. Do they need block practice? Do they need to just keep doing what, I mean, they're striping it already on the range. What they might need some random, some variable. They might need some transfer training. They might need to, you know, get that on the course. Is the golf ball giving them good feedback? Yeah, in this case, sure. Is the movement at full speed fine? Yeah, for what they're working on. They've got this skill. They just can't take it on the course. Full speed's fine. You can kind of see how this might work, right? Mid-range wedge player, the guy that, you know, they can't hit it 60, 70, 80, 50 yards. You know, go back to here. Well, first of all, can they hit it at all? You know, if they can hit it solid in general, then, you know, we might not have to change any mechanics, but they probably don't need block practice. They might need some variable practice. Hit it 60, hit it 70, hit it 50, hit it 90. Does the golf ball provide feedback? To an extent, yeah. Range balls suck, but yeah, golf ball provides feedback. This player probably is awful at short version of swing and slow motion. Just anecdotally, they probably are terrible at that. They probably never practice their half swings and chest high swings, and they can't slow it down. So this player probably needs random variable practice with a golf ball at different speeds and different sizes. That make sense? Typical slicer, I kind of talked about that earlier. You've got over the top, outside in, face open. You know, going back to that, that's a tough one to fix in one lesson because you got to change what? You got to change path. You got to change face. You got to change that could have unintended consequences of low point and contact on the face. You probably need to touch on a few things for this player, and their practice might look very chunked out. Okay, I need, you know, 15 minutes of snap hook getting it closed, and then I need 15 minutes of swing the club underneath the training aid, the alignment rod that I've got stuck in the ground, and then I need 15 minutes of getting a low point in the right place, and then I need 15 minutes of foot powder spray in the face to make sure you're not shanking it, and then I need 15 minutes of trying to put it all together. Right? Which ones are the hardest? So that might be too much to take on in one lesson, but you know, you chunk it out and you give the player, you know, a set of tasks with the appropriate feedback and types of practice, and send them on their way. Those are my examples. All right, final thoughts. Wow, this is like perfect, an hour. All right, final thoughts. So first of all, students don't know how to practice. They don't know how to swing. They don't know how to chip. They don't know how to putt. They don't know how to practice either. Okay, so you have to teach them how to practice, just like you teach them how to grip it, just like you teach them how to do anything in golf. All right, your job is to pick the right mix of those different things. Like I said, I think I'm going to print this out for my own personal use, or, you know, take a picture of it, because, like, you know, I think it's pretty powerful to be able to assign the right types and styles of practice and feedback. We got to motivate your players on how to do it. We talked a little bit about that. And if you did your job, it's not necessarily going to show up in one lesson with a great before after. Yes, that's still good, but it's really more about the next lesson. Did you see improvement in what you worked on in the 2, 3, 4 weeks since you last saw them? If you did, you're doing great. If you see no improvement, it could be on them. It could be on you. You can only control you, though. So, you know, what do you need to do to make sure that they are learning the way they need to? So, a couple additional resources, things that I liked. These are like book recommendations. I've got one here that's kind of funny. I've got The Little Book of Talent from a certain Ty Walker. Thank you, Ty. That was from my Golf Tech days. This is about practicing, learning new skills. Teaches. It's very readable for you and your students. I like Atomic Habits. I just read it recently. It's great for life in general, I would say, but also it's great to help your students make practice easier to do, more accessible, easier to set up. Practice Manual by Adam Young. I don't have all these books with me. Some of them are lent out. Practice Scrimmages by another guy here, Trent Warner. The Art of Learning, Josh Waitskin. And then I would certainly appreciate any feedback on today's presentation. You can email me or give me a call if you want to talk about anything further. If you have anything that you thought was awesome, like head blowing, great, I want to know about it. Like what blew your mind, or if it was, needed to be better. I needed better visuals, need to talk better. I'm always trying to do a better job in these presentations. And so, just like the feedback I talked about earlier, I need some feedback too. So please feel free, rip me apart, be critical. But thank you all for giving me an hour of your time. If there's any questions or comments before Holly kind of takes us out here, now would be a great time.
Hey, Dan, thanks for doing this. One of the books that came to mind to me is, and Trent Werner's had this guy speak at his programs before, is Dr. Rick Jensen.
Mm-hmm.
The book, Easier Said Than Done, talks a lot about that block random practice. If anyone doesn't talk about that on the lesson tee, this is a kind of a must read.
That's a good one. Yep, for sure. I've read that one. That's good. Good recommendation.
Thanks, Dan.
Oh, thank you, Ty. Did you see the book?
I did. I saw you open it up. Yes, nice work.
Look at that. Look at that. It's got your autograph.
There you go.
Thank you. I use this all the time. I've recommended this book a million times.
That might be like an artist. Once I'm dead, it will be more valuable. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to hang on to this one. This one's not getting lent out.
All right. Good.
All right. Anybody else? Any questions or comments?
I got a quick one. I got kicked off twice. I think it was just my Golf Tech internet. You never had any loss of connection, right, guys? Yeah, I think it was just me twice, so I missed a little bit, but got back in. So thank you. Off to the next Zoom. Cheers.
All right. See you back.
Well, thank you everybody for joining. I did record this. I almost forgot to hit record at the beginning, so that's my apologies. But we got it all, and this will be posted on the members only side of the Colorado PGA website. You can just go to coloradopga.com, up in the right hand corner, click log in, and you'll be able to see this. It's just a reference guide. I'll also follow up with everyone who was on the call with an email and just share Dan's contact info he has on this slide, so you can connect with him on your own time if you'd like to learn more.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. That was good.
Awesome.
Thanks, Holly.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Holly.
Right on.
All right, I'll stop the recording. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. I hope that's
Oh, that's
okay.
okay.